Hey everyone, Happy New Year. One of the things that I had done a couple of videos on that I wanted to do a little bit more of a deeper dive in, and that is the most essential part of my planning is the weekly review. And the weekly review for me it's a combination of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that Stephen Covey put together and David Allen's Getting Things Done. And the thing that you look at is the time frame of 1 week, Sunday to Saturday or Sunday to Sunday. And you're always going to have, depending on whatever stage you are in your life, you're going to have things happen from a personal standpoint, with your family, with your kids, maybe with your parents. You're going to have something that's going to happen with your business. You're going to have some kind of recreational activity. And then you're going to have that standard maintenance stuff like paying your bills and getting your car insurance and getting your car serviced and your HVAC fixed. All of those things require an effective amount of planning, but they require it not all at the same time, but in that small chunk of 1 week and what you can accomplish during that 1 week. So there's a number of different phrases that are used within that. One of the ones is called the hard landscape, which is your calendar. And your calendar is going to have commitments of specific days and times in which you have committed to do something. I've got a meeting today at 10 o'clock. I've got a meeting today at 2 o'clock. And they might be, in this case, they're Zoom meetings, but if I had to travel, right, and I've got a trade show that I'm going to go to this weekend. So that's hard landscape things that you need to plan out and plan for. I mean, I've got to drive to the airport. I've got to make sure I know, okay, my flight is at 11. Do I leave my house at 9, 10? When do I leave my house to get to the airport? So those are things that you need to do from a hard landscape. So that's where you start your framework. So you look at Sunday through Saturday or Sunday through Sunday, however you want to do it. And you start planning out exactly what you've got that are commitments, that are time commitments that you've committed that I'm going to be in a certain place at a certain time, whether it's at somebody's office, whether it's a doctor's visit, whether it's get your hair cut, go to the eye doctor, the dentist, whatever. Or, you've got work-related things that you've got to do. So that's that one part. The second piece of this is to look at all of the other projects that you've got going on in your life. And this is the David Allen thing of what is the next action to take action on that project that will move that project forward. And that's sometimes one of these things that you have to sit down and think about because you may not know what you're going to do. Well, this is where I had created, and I think I've shown you guys this before, is I created a trigger list for different areas of my life. There's a lot of stuff in here for my business. There's a lot of stuff in here for my house. Like I've got a whole list of stuff that has to be done for the house, like standard maintenance stuff and things of that nature. Then if there are things on here also that are recreational, right? Maybe I want to learn how to play golf better or pickleball or whatever. The idea is that I use this trigger list when I'm doing my weekly review because one of the first steps that I do, in addition to looking at the hard landscape of I've committed to be here at a certain place and a certain time, is I then look at, okay, in each one of these, what is the next project and what is the next action on the next project that I could accomplish this week? And so then what I do is I take a sheet of paper and I literally just brainstorm for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, maybe even longer of looking at a combination of the trigger list and then writing it down on what I call the big list. And the big list is just basically free form. There's no structure to it. From the simple idea is if I look at something and I just start thinking, and something pops into my head and I write that down. Now, oftentimes I've written stuff down and it's like, yeah, that's great, but I can't do anything on that. It has to go on another list. And that's where it gets, and a system can get a little complicated. Now, what I've done, and this is my system, and you could see if this system will work for you, is there's a company that's called Levenger, and they've got these great planners and these great notebooks. And what's great is these planners and notebooks have these little circle rings in them. So you can literally, and I've got a notebook here, you can literally just tear pages out and put them in, right? So I've got one of my business associates and I, we have a weekly meeting and we go over a bunch of different stuff. And tomorrow is the 6th of January. So I've got literally in here a page just for the meeting notes. And then these are the backup notes of previous meetings so that I've done. Now, that's where my trigger list comes in. And I sat down actually last night watching a bunch of football games, and I wrote down this one list of all of these things that I have to do. I then can convert that into an email and say, hey, look, here's a potential agenda of things that we could talk about, that I've got some things going on. There's a trade show that I'll be attending and some other things that we need to discuss. The idea is the weekly review, and just thinking for that 1 week, I'm going to do the hard landscape, these meetings at this time, be here at a certain place. I'm going to also have agendas written for any of the meetings that I'm going to do and be prepared for them because I've kind of pre-thought about it a little bit. Additionally, projects that are going to happen in February and March and April are also part of that weekly review because I'm thinking about, I've got a trade show in March and I've got a trade show in April. What are we doing for them? Again, this is a business standpoint, but what are we doing? So you start thinking a little bit more in the future, but if you don't do the weekly review, you just wing it, as I've said before, and you never want to do that. You want to make sure that every time that you're doing anything, that you're planning it as well as you possibly can. Yes, stuff is going to come up. But what I've discovered is the discipline of doing this weekly review, of getting everything out of my head onto a piece of paper, frees up my mind to think of other ideas because I'm not thinking about that one project all the time. I've actually gotten it out of my head and on a piece of paper. And then I might actually be, cooking breakfast. And I think, oh, what a great idea. I should do blah, blah, blah on da-da-da. Where'd that come from? You have no idea. But you're not thinking about the thing all the time, and it kind of gives your brain a chance to start thinking in a new way. So that's my big pitch on looking at your week in a 1 week period, planning out the hard landscape of the hard things that have to be committed to, that you've committed to from a time and date standpoint. But then all of your other projects that you want to take action on, you need to write them all down and write down what the next action is. Now, I've got things on my trigger list that are for my house, right? Let's just say it's a maintenance thing. I want to get the HVAC taken care of. Well, that's not something I need to do this week. So it doesn't even go onto the list. But it's one of those things that I know that I've got to get scheduled. So if it doesn't go on this week, but it's on the trigger list, it'll remind me the next week that I look at it. Well, do I need to do anything about that? No. When do I need to schedule it? Probably July. Okay, great. So I don't need to worry about that until July. So I just skip over that. But the idea is all of those things that are going to trigger different things that have to happen in various aspects of my life, family commitments, business commitments, relationship commitments, my recreational activities, gym, health, wealth, all of those things are part of your weekly review so that you're looking at everything from that 50,000 foot level, then you go down to 40, 30, 20, and then the week itself and the day is actually the runway of where you are when you're taking off, right? You're in action. So when you do all this and you get it done right and you get it this compact, you really can start effectively creating momentum towards your goals of the things that you want to get done. And it makes it a lot easier. It does reduce stress. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people get a little freaked out about is they're like, yeah, I could do that, but it feels like it's too much, micromanagement. Micromanagement only exists in your head. When you start micromanaging your life and you start micromanaging your time, you will be amazed at how much more time you actually have, because a lot of things that you write down never take as long as you expect them to. I might write down something that, like, I'm going to spend 20 minutes creating this presentation. And maybe I'm using something like ChatGPT or Canva or something like that, and I'm using the combination of the two. And I realize it only took me 10 minutes. Well, that's another gift of time that I got back of 10 minutes. So that's the essence of this. I'm going to put two links in the comments below. One is the David Allen book. If you've never read it, you really should. You'll get the audio. Same thing with 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is a book that I read decades ago, and I still use those principles today because they are really timeless principles. So check out the links below. Give this a thumbs up if you really enjoyed this content. I really hope you do. And if there's any comments or questions, hit me up in the DMs. Take care.